Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today's story is absolutely wild. Imagine showing up to catch your flight and HOA Karen tries to steal your first class seat, only to find out you are not just a passenger, but the pilot. Yeah, things went from entitled to unbelievable in seconds. Let's get into it.
Airports have their own kind of chaos. The steady hum of rolling suitcases on polished floors, the muffled boarding announcements that always seem half audible, and the constant shuffle of travelers in every direction. That day, I was sitting near the gate with my coffee, trying to enjoy a few quiet minutes before boarding. My flight was on time, my boarding pass tucked into my pocket, and all I wanted was a smooth trip. That's when I saw her. She strutted into the waiting area like she was stepping onto a stage, designer handbag on her arm, oversized sunglasses still on indoors, and that unmistakable aura of someone who thinks the rules don't apply to them. She reminded me exactly of the HOA Karens I had dealt with before in my neighborhood, people who thrive on drama and feel entitled to control everyone else's lives. The only difference? Instead of patrolling lawns and driveways, this Karen was patrolling the boarding gate. At first, I didn't think much of it. Just another loud traveler in an already stressful environment. But then her eyes locked onto me. Or more specifically, onto the boarding pass I was holding. Her face tightened as if she had just spotted someone walking a dog across her grass. She marched over with her heels clacking against the tile, each step radiating hostility. "You're sitting in first class?" she asked, not even bothering with a hello. Her voice dripped with disbelief, as though I had just confessed to committing a crime. I looked up from my coffee, caught off guard by her tone. Yes. That's right." She scoffed, her arms folding across her chest. "That can't be right. First class isn't for people like you. You should give me your seat." The nearby passengers perked up instantly, their heads turning like sunflowers tracking the light. A couple sitting across from me exchanged amused glances, clearly anticipating drama. Even the guy with headphones next to me paused his music. I tried to keep my cool. "Ma'am, this is my assigned seat, paid in full. You'll have to talk to the airline if you have an issue." Her eyebrows shot up like I had insulted her personally. "Oh, I'll do more than talk. I'll fix this. You don't belong in first class." "I do. I've lived in a prestigious HOA community for 20 years. I know what first-class passengers look like. And it's not you." The entire gate area went silent for a beat, and then came the murmurs. People were whispering things like, "Is she serious?" and "Oh, this is about to be good." A teenager nearby snickered, pulling out his phone like he already knew this was YouTube gold in the making. I blinked at her in disbelief. "Lady, this isn't a neighborhood committee. This is an airline. My seat is mine." But Karen wasn't backing down. If anything, she doubled down. She turned sharply on her heel and stomped toward the gate agent, who was quietly scanning boarding passes. "Excuse me," Karen barked, slamming her hand on the counter. "This man—" She jabbed her finger in my direction as if I were a criminal in a lineup. "Stole a first-class ticket. That seat should be mine." The young gate agent looked up calmly, clearly no stranger to outrageous passenger behavior. "Ma'am, his boarding pass is valid. He's assigned to first class." Karen laughed bitterly, as if the very suggestion was absurd. "Impossible. I know who belongs in first class, and he doesn't. Reassign his seat to me immediately." Gasps and laughter rippled through the crowd. A man in a business suit muttered, "She's out of her mind." The gate agent, to her credit, didn't flinch. "Ma'am, we can't just take someone's ticket. That's not how this works." Karen leaned closer, lowering her voice but not enough that the rest of us couldn't hear. "Listen, if you don't move him, I'll have the airline reported. This is discrimination against first-class passengers like me." At this point, the passengers waiting nearby were fully invested in the spectacle. People were openly recording on their phones, trying to capture every word. I stayed seated, sipping my coffee, more amused than angry, but when I saw the gate agent glance at me apologetically and then pick up the phone, I knew things were escalating. Karen, on the other hand, looked smug, certain she had won. She adjusted her designer purse and gave me a smirk like she had just secured her prize. The entire gate area was now buzzing like a live audience before a big reveal. People leaned forward in their seats, whispering, "Oh man, security's coming." Some even cheered softly, hoping this entitled stranger would finally get put in her place. As I sat there, waiting to see what would happen next, one thought crossed my mind. This was shaping up to be the wildest flight I'd ever taken, and we hadn't even boarded yet.
Wow, can you believe that? Ken was ready to fight for a seat that wasn't even hers, acting like she owned the airline. But she had no idea who she was messing with. Trust me, it only gets crazier from here.
The moment the gate agent picked up the phone, the entire energy at the gate shifted. You could feel the anticipation thick in the air, like everyone was waiting for the opening act of a play. Karen stood tall, arms crossed, her designer purse dangling like a trophy. She was convinced she had won. "Don't worry, folks," she announced loudly to no one in particular. "This will be sorted in just a minute. I have connections. People like me don't sit in coach." People exchanged glances and snickers. A teenager whispered to his mom, "This is better than Netflix," while another man openly pulled out his phone and muttered, "This is going viral tonight." Meanwhile, I just sat in my chair, legs crossed, boarding pass still in my pocket, sipping what little was left of my coffee. I wasn't angry anymore. I was entertained. It's not every day you get front row seats to a public meltdown. Within minutes, 2 airline security officers appeared at the gate. They looked professional, calm, and completely unamused. One was tall and broad-shouldered, the other shorter but sharp-eyed, scanning the crowd like he was already sizing up the situation. Karen immediately pounced. "Officers, thank goodness you're here. This man—" She pointed dramatically at me, like she was presenting Exhibit A. "Stole a first-class ticket. That's my seat, and he's refusing to move." The taller officer looked at me, then back at her, then at the gate agent. "Ma'am, can we see your boarding pass, please?" Karen handed it over with a flourish, like she was finally going to prove her point. The officer scanned it, glanced at the screen, and then raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, your ticket clearly says economy. You're in seat 32B. The gate area erupted in muffled laughter. Someone actually clapped, while another passenger muttered, "Oh, busted!" Karen's face turned bright red. "That must be a mistake. I always fly first class. Always. I deserve that seat." The shorter officer leaned in. "Ma'am, the ticket doesn't lie. You're assigned to economy. That gentleman is assigned to first class." End of discussion. But Karen wasn't done. She spun on her heel and pointed at me again, her voice rising. "Do you know who I am? I live in the most exclusive neighborhood in the state. I sit on the HOA board. I don't belong in coach with the regular people." That was it. The crowd broke. Laughter rippled across the entire gate area. Even the gate agent covered her mouth to hide a smile. I couldn't help but grin too. This was straight out of an HOA meeting. Except now, her audience wasn't her neighbors forced to listen. It was dozens of strangers who saw right through her. The taller officer stayed calm, but you could tell he was fighting back an eye roll. "Ma'am, your neighborhood has nothing to do with this flight. You either take your assigned seat or you don't fly today." Karen gasped like someone had slapped her. "Are you threatening me? Because I know the FAA. I will have this entire airline shut down if you don't move him and give me his seat." The shorter officer gave her a look of pure disbelief. "You're going to shut down the airline because you don't like your seat assignment? That's not how this works." By now, people were openly recording. I saw at least 5 phones pointed directly at her, the red record icons glowing. A young woman whispered, "This is going viral by tonight, guaranteed." I finally spoke up, keeping my voice calm but firm. "Ma'am, I didn't steal anything. I paid for my ticket, just like everyone else. You don't get to demand my seat just because you think you deserve it." Karen's face contorted with rage. "You don't talk to me that way. I know people in power and I'll—" But she didn't get to finish. The taller officer raised his hand. "That's enough. You're causing a scene and you're disrupting the boarding process. If you don't calm down, we're going to have to remove you from this flight. Gasps spread through the crowd, and suddenly the dynamic shifted. Karen's confidence faltered. For the first time, she realized this wasn't going her way. She looked around, but instead of sympathy, all she found were eyes watching, phones recording, and smirks on faces. Her voice cracked as she tried to recover. This is harassment. I'm a paying customer. I demand respect. The gate agent, finally stepping back into the conversation, shook her head. Respect goes both ways, ma'am. Right now, you're disrespecting the crew, the officers, and every other passenger here. You need to take your assigned seat or step aside. The tension was thick, but at the same time, the mood was electric. Everyone knew this story wasn't over. The question was, would Karen back down or double down again?
Man, the look on her face when the gate agent announced he's the pilot. That had to be priceless. She thought she was about to win, but she just embarrassed herself in front of the whole terminal. And let me tell you, Karen wasn't done yet.
The standoff at the gate felt like it had reached its peak. Karen was red-faced, puffing up like a balloon about to burst, while the officers stood firm, arms crossed. The gate agent was quietly trying to keep boarding on track, but no one was paying attention to the boarding calls. Every eye in the waiting area was locked on Karen and me. Then came the announcement. "Attention passengers of Flight 217, the gate agent's voice rang out over the intercom. At this time, we would like to invite our flight crew and cockpit staff to begin pre-boarding. That one line changed everything, because I wasn't just another passenger with a first-class ticket. I was the pilot. I stood up calmly, brushing the last of the crumbs from the snack I'd been finishing, and walked toward the gate. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, phones tracking my every step. The officers looked surprised, and the gate agent gave me the faintest nod of acknowledgement. Karen's jaw dropped so hard I swore I heard it click. What are you doing?" she sputtered, pointing at me like I was breaking some sacred law. I pulled out my ID badge and held it up for the officers to see. Their entire posture shifted the moment they read it. No confusion, no doubt. Instant respect. The taller officer gave me a knowing smile. "Captain, we didn't realize." I nodded. "No worries. Happens more often than you'd think." Then, just loud enough for Karen and the crowd to hear, I added, "Some people don't always recognize authority when they see it." The crowd laughed and murmured, phones still recording. Karen's face twisted into something between horror and fury. "Wait, you're the pilot?" I looked her straight in the eye. "Yes, ma'am. And as the pilot, I can assure you my seat isn't up for negotiation." That line sent the entire gate area into an uproar. People were laughing, clapping, some even whistling. The businessman in the front row shook his head with a grin, muttering, "That's poetic justice." Karen, however, wasn't about to admit defeat. "This is a setup," she shrieked. "You're lying. He's not really the pilot. Look at him. He was sitting there drinking coffee like some common passenger." The shorter officer smirked. "Ma'am, that's because pilots are passengers until they step into the cockpit. That doesn't change the fact that he's about to fly your plane." Her eyes darted around, looking for anyone to back her up, but all she saw were smirking faces and recording phones. She waved her hands frantically. "No, no, no! This isn't fair! If he's the pilot, then I should definitely be in first class. I should get special treatment." The taller officer sighed, his patience thinning. "Ma'am, the only special treatment you're going to get if you keep this up is an escort out of the airport." The crowd roared with laughter again, the tension completely broken now. For the first time, I saw genuine panic in Karen's eyes. She realized she had backed herself into a corner with no escape. Trying one last desperate move, she turned to me. You can't fly this plane! You've been targeting me, humiliating me in front of everyone. I don't feel safe with you as the pilot." I couldn't help but laugh at the sheer absurdity of it. "Ma'am, I'm not targeting you. You walked up to me and demanded my seat. Then you doubled down, called security, and wasted everyone's time. The only person humiliating you right now is yourself." That line hit harder than any argument. The crowd erupted again, some clapping, others shouting things like, "Tell her," and "Sit down, Karen." The gate agent, who had been quiet through most of this, finally spoke into her mic with a firm tone. "Ma'am, you need to step aside. You're delaying the flight. Either board with your assigned group and sit in your assigned seat, or you will be removed from this aircraft entirely." Karen froze, caught between pride and panic. Her eyes darted to the officers, to the gate agent, to the crowd, and finally back to me. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. For a moment, she just stood there, trembling with frustration. And then, to everyone's amazement, she stomped her foot like a child. "This isn't over," she hissed before storming off toward the corner of the waiting area. The crowd burst into applause, some even cheering. The businessman clapped me on the shoulder as I walked past. "Good luck up there, Captain, and thanks for that show. Worth the price of admission." I chuckled and handed my badge back to the officer. He gave me a nod. "We'll keep an eye on her. Make sure she doesn't cause any trouble once you're in the cockpit." "Appreciate it," I replied, heading toward the jet bridge. As I stepped into the plane, I couldn't help but think how poetic it was. Karen had spent all that energy trying to take my first-class seat, only to find out the seat she wanted was never hers to begin with. And worse, I was the one in charge of the entire flight.
Okay, now Karen's not being just untitled. She's being straight up reckless. Demanding to fire the pilot? That's next level nonsense. At this point, you just know the officers are about to step in. Let's see how that plays out.
By the time I stepped onto the jet bridge, the situation at the gate was still buzzing like an aftershock. Karen had stormed off to the corner, muttering under her breath, arms folded so tightly her knuckles were white. The officers kept an eye on her while passengers began boarding in orderly groups, though everyone still had their phones out, hoping she'd try something else. I slipped into the cockpit with my co-pilot, who was already running pre-flight checks. He raised an eyebrow when he saw my grin. "You look like you just watched a soap opera." I laughed. "Something like that. Karen at the gate tried to steal my first-class seat. Didn't go her way." He chuckled. "Oh, I saw the crowd outside. Let me guess. Viral video by tonight?" "Guaranteed," I said, buckling into my seat. But just as I was reviewing the flight plan, a knock came at the cockpit door. It was the gate agent, looking slightly flustered. "Captain, sorry to bother you," she said. "We're having a situation with the passenger in 32B. I didn't even need to ask who it was. "Karen," I sighed. The agent nodded. "She's refusing to board unless she's upgraded. She's demanding first class again. She claims it's unsafe to have you flying the plane because of personal bias." My co-pilot nearly fell out of his chair laughing. "She really said that?" I rubbed my forehead. Unbelievable. "All right, let's handle this." I stepped out of the cockpit and back into the jet bridge where Karen was still standing, arms crossed like she owned the place. The officers were still nearby, clearly done with her antics but waiting for the final call. The moment she saw me, she pounced. "There he is! That's the one! He humiliated me at the gate, and now you expect me to trust him with my life at 35,000 feet? I won't do it. I demand a new pilot or a first-class seat." Gasps and laughter rippled through the passengers already seated. Some leaned out into the aisle to get a better view. A man in row 2 whispered, "She's really trying to fire the pilot now." I kept my tone calm, professional, but firm. "Ma'am, I am the captain of this aircraft. You do not have the authority to demand a seat change, and you certainly don't have the authority to remove me from the flight deck. Either you take your assigned seat, or you will not be flying with us today." Karen's eyes bulged. "You can't talk to me like that. I'll call the FAA. I'll have your license revoked." The taller officer finally stepped in. "That's enough, ma'am. You've disrupted the boarding process, ignored crew instructions, and wasted everyone's time. You're in violation of federal law. You are no longer flying today." The crowd reacted instantly. Applause, cheers, even a couple of whistles. One woman shouted, "Good riddance!" while another man muttered, "About time." Karen's face drained of color. Wait, no, you can't kick me off. I paid for this ticket. The shorter officer gave her a cold stare. And now you've lost it. Please gather your belongings and come with us. Karen stomped her foot, her voice trembling with outrage. This is discrimination. This is abuse of power. I'll sue all of you. But her words carried no weight anymore. The officers each took an arm and guided her firmly toward the exit. She struggled for a moment, but when she realized the cameras were still rolling, she froze, suddenly hyper-aware of how ridiculous she looked. The passengers inside the plane erupted into cheers as she was escorted off. Some even clapped in rhythm, chanting, "Bye, Karen, bye, Karen." I stood by the cockpit door, watching the scene with a mix of relief and satisfaction. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said over the cabin mic once the door shut behind her, "thank you for your patience. We'll be departing shortly, and I promise a smooth flight, without interruptions." The cabin erupted in laughter again, the tension completely dissolved. Back in the cockpit, my co-pilot shook his head in disbelief. "Man, I've been flying 20 years and I've never seen anything like that." I grinned, setting my headset in place. "Neither have I. But one thing's for sure, she picked the wrong day to mess with the pilot." As we taxied out, I couldn't help but reflect on it all. Karen came into that airport convinced she was the queen of the skies, entitled to anything she wanted. But by the time the police escorted her out in front of hundreds of laughing passengers, the only seat she had left was in the back of a squad car. And honestly, I couldn't imagine a more fitting ending.
Boom, there it is. Karen thought she was flying first class, but she ended up escorted right out of the airport in front of everybody. From Queen of Skies to the back of a squad car. What a downfall. And that's the story of HOA Karen versus the wrong pilot. What do you guys think? Was that the most satisfying ending or what? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. Until then, fly safe and stay freedom.